Welcome to this virtual education session, checking your background insulin, also known as basal insulin. This session will cover how to check your background insulin and how to adjust your background insulin. The function of background or basal insulin is to keep blood glucose levels stable between meals. So, if you didn't eat all day, technically your blood glucose level should stay fairly stable, for example within 2 millimoles, with the correct dose of background insulin. There are two main types of background insulin. Once-a-day injections, for example Lantus, which lasts for around 24 hours, and twice-a-day injections, for example Levemir, which lasts for around 12 hours. If you take background insulin twice a day, it's best to carry out 2 fasting checks to see if both your morning and evening doses are correct. If you only take a background insulin once a day, doing 2 fasting checks can also be helpful to see if your insulin is lasting the full 24 hours. Here are some steps to follow which explain how to check your background insulin that you take in the evening. Have an early dinner, try to make it low in carbohydrates or a carbohydrate-free meal. Do not have any snacks, alcohol, or do any exercise or use corrections. Test your blood glucose before you go to bed, ensuring that your last fast-acting injection was at least 4 hours ago, so there is no active insulin still working. And test your blood glucose when you get up. Here are some steps to follow which explain how to check your background insulin that you take in the morning. Skip breakfast and do not have any snacks, alcohol, or any exercise, or use any corrections. Then test your blood glucose late morning. This means having a later lunch, and test your blood glucose prior to your lunch. So how do you adjust your background dose? Ideally, you want your blood glucose results from a fasting check, either in the evening or morning, to be within 2 millimoles. If blood glucose levels are increasing more than 2 millimoles, try increasing your background dose by 10%. Equally, if your blood glucose is dropping more than 2 millimoles, then reduce your dose by 10%. For example, if you take 12 units of background insulin, 10% is calculated by 12 divided by 10, which gives 1.2. You would round this down to 1 unit, and this would mean that 1 unit would be taken off or added onto your dose, depending on what your check showed and if you needed more or less insulin. It is important not to make more than 1 change within 3 days, to allow your body time to adjust to new insulin doses. Let's go through some examples. For the first example, this person had their evening meal and took their fast-acting insulin at 6 p.m. They then took their background insulin at their usual time of 9 p.m. They went to bed and checked their blood glucose at 10 p.m, 4 hours after their last NovoRapid dose. Their blood sugar was 7 millimoles. When they woke up, they checked their blood glucose level and it was at 12 millimoles. This shows that their blood sugars have risen by 5 millimoles overnight, suggesting that they might need more background insulin to keep them stable and prevent a rise above target. By increasing their background dose by 10%, this would mean taking an additional 2 units, so their background dose would now be 18 millimoles. This is what it might look like on LibreView. As you can see, there is a gradual rise overnight, suggesting there is not enough background insulin to keep blood sugars stable. In this example, the person had their evening meal and took their fast-acting insulin at 6:30 p.m. They took their usual background dose at the usual time. Before bed, their blood glucose was 9 millimoles, and on waking it was 4 millimoles. This shows their insulin has lowered their blood sugars overnight by 5 millimoles. To keep blood sugars stable and prevent hypos overnight, they could decrease their background insulin by 10%, which would mean a reduction of 2 units, therefore taking 20 units of background insulin. This is what it might look like on LibreView. You can see a gradual decrease overnight, dropping blood sugars to 4 millimoles. So their blood sugars are lower in the morning than at night by more than 2, suggesting too much insulin. This is an example of a morning fasting check. In this example, the person checked their fasting blood glucose on waking, which was 5 millimoles. They did not have any breakfast or take any Novorapid. At 1 p.m. they checked their blood glucose, which was 6 millimoles. This shows that their current dose of 12 units of background has kept them stable through the morning, therefore no changes to the dose are suggested. This is what it might look like on LibreView. You can see that over the 6 hours, blood glucose levels have remained relatively stable. Thank you for listening to this virtual education session. Please get in touch with our diabetes team if you have any questions or concerns regarding the topics raised in this session. Thank you.